room, said nothing yet, and already felt the cold stare of someone's eyes? You smile, you are polite, you try to be kind, and still the invisible wall is clear. In that moment you ask yourself, what have I done wrong? Why do they dislike me? The answer often lies not in you, but in the hidden storms within another's soul. We live surrounded by countless relationships, and not everyone looks at us with understanding or goodwill. People often project their insecurities, envy, or prejudices onto others. Stoic philosophy reminds us the only thing within our control is how we choose to respond. When we stand firm before distant eyes, when we realize our worth is not dependent on another's acceptance, then we are truly free. And from that awareness, we begin to understand the deeper reasons why someone might hate you. Part 1. Why some people dislike you. 9 reasons. 1. Silent envy. Envy is one of the deepest roots of hatred and distance between people. It is like a hidden flame. At first, only a spark, but if left unchecked, it can blaze and consume relationships, trust, and the peace within one's heart. The troubling part is that envy rarely shows itself directly. It hides in cold stares, in sarcastic remarks disguised as casual words, in indifference when another achieves something worthy of respect. It is an emotion difficult to admit, for admission means exposing one's own dissatisfaction with oneself. That is why envy often hides beneath layers of disguise, yet it remains strong enough to create invisible cracks in relationships. Many assume envy arises only when you possess wealth or status. In reality, it can spring from much smaller things. A person may envy you simply because you remain calm in situations where they easily lose control. They may resent seeing you steadfastly follow your path while they struggle with their own detours. Sometimes just a gentle smile, a quiet confidence, or even the optimism you radiate is enough to stir in them a sense of loss, a reminder of what they lack in their own lives. Envy works like a mirror. It does not reveal who you are, but what the other person sees in themselves when facing you. When they see your success, it reminds them of their failures. When they see your confidence, it recalls their insecurities. When they see your resolve, it exposes their own weakness of will. Thus, envy does not truly come from you. It arises from the silent comparisons they create within themselves, and those comparisons always leave them feeling lesser. A clear example can be found in the workplace. You finish a project on time and receive praise from your superior. Instead of being inspired, some colleagues may begin to see you as a thorn in their side. They do not congratulate you sincerely and may even search for flaws to discredit your success. If this mindset persists, it can lead to toxic behavior, gossip behind your back, subtle sabotage, even fabrications to harm your reputation. This does not happen because you did something wrong, but because your success reflects what they have not achieved. Stoic philosophy has a clear perspective on this. Marcus Aurelius once reminded, "Do not waste yourself on what lies beyond your control. Focus only on your actions and choices." Another's envy lies completely outside your control. You cannot change the emotions in their heart, nor can you please everyone. If you begin to live just to avoid envy, you fall into the trap of losing yourself, constantly calculating how to keep others comfortable. And in doing so, you will never live fully. The only thing you can do is remain alert. When you face the gaze of envy, remind yourself that it is not the truth about you, but merely the reflection of insecurity within another. Instead of anger, you can observe it as an interesting phenomenon of the mind. Here is proof of how often humans compare and torment themselves. This perspective keeps you from being drawn into a spiral of negativity and allows you to remain grounded in your own character and values. Silent envy can wound deeply if you let it enter your soul. But if you face it with stoic clarity, you will see it as a small test of self-mastery. You will no longer be swayed by whispers or indifference. You will know that whatever achievements or qualities you possess are the fruit of action and discipline, never something to be diminished for the comfort of others. 2. Misalignment in communication. In daily life, many tensions and conflicts do not arise from malice, but from simple misunderstanding. A hurried remark, a text without tone, an unintended glance. Any of these can plant seeds of mistrust. It is like two radios transmitting but not on the same frequency. The sound emerges distorted, not as it was first intended. This misalignment builds walls, and if unnoticed, the walls thicken until mutual understanding is completely shut out. Miscommunication is not only about inaccurate transmission, it is also the way the listener interprets through their own emotions, prejudices, and state of mind. A neutral statement can be heard as sarcasm, a kind reminder mistaken for condescension, and a moment of silence seen as coldness. When both sides wear their own tinted lenses, reality becomes distorted, provoking reactions far beyond what was said. It is in this gap between intent and reception that distance begins to grow. I recall a friend who once shared about a group meeting. He offered feedback on a colleague's report. His intent was constructive, aiming to improve the work. Yet the colleague took it as criticism, as if their competence was being dismissed. The result was an uncomfortable silence, followed by awkward cooperation in the days after. On closer look, the root was simply a blunt choice of words and the haste of delivery. A small detail, but large enough to create a rift. This shows that communication is not just words, but the harmony between intent, expression, and listening. Another common problem is the lack of active listening. Instead of truly hearing what the other wants to convey, we rush to respond based on what we think they mean. We interrupt, we assume, we rebut before hearing them out. This makes the other feel disrespected, causing them to close off, even to harbor resentment. In contrast, when we listen with full attention, placing ourselves in their position, many conflicts that seemed insurmountable suddenly dissolve. Stoicism offers a profound reminder here. Do not trust your first impression as the truth. Epictetus said, "People are not disturbed by events, but by the views they take of them." In communication, too, we are not harmed by words themselves, but by how we choose to interpret them. If we can pause, reflect on ourselves before reacting, many misunderstandings will vanish on their own. This requires discipline of the mind, the calm to resist judgment and assumption. In families and friendships, such misalignment often leaves lasting scars. A husband silent from fatigue may be taken by his wife as indifference. A friend's delay in replying to a message may be seen as neglect. Without clear exchange, negative assumptions pile up. We create a version of the other in our mind, not based on truth, but imagination. That distorted version becomes the target of our anger and disappointment. So what is the solution? First, prioritize clarity. When there is ambiguity, do not hesitate to ask, "Do you mean?" Or, "Is it correct to understand it this way?" Second, listen more than you speak. True listening reveals much beyond words in tone, in breath, in unspoken feeling. And lastly, grant others the benefit of the doubt. Do not assume ill intent merely because you felt hurt. Misalignment in communication is inevitable, for none of us are perfect in expressing or understanding. But if we cultivate habits of clarity, genuine listening, and restraint from hasty reactions, most misunderstandings can be avoided. Then, instead of being drawn into suspicion, we preserve peace of mind, and relationships are nurtured on trust and respect. 3. Conflicting values. One of the reasons people drift apart, or even come to despise each other, lies in differences of values and beliefs. Each of us grows up in unique circumstances, shaped by family, culture, community, and personal experience. These factors form a framework of values, a compass that guides our actions and worldview. When two people share similar values, understanding and support come easily. But when values clash, each defends their stance as identity itself, and conflict may widen into division. What is notable is that these differences need not stem from grand topics like politics or religion. Sometimes they arise from small matters of daily life. One may value discipline and punctuality, another flexibility. One may prize simplicity, another equates success with luxury. One may treat work as life's purpose, another believes balance is the highest aim. Each has its logic, but when not met with respect, such differences turn into sources of discord, even contempt. Human nature tends to treat one's own values as absolute. We think this is the right way to live, and anything else appears wrong or threatening. Psychologically, this is common, for admitting the relativity of values shakes the foundation on which one defines oneself. Thus, when someone behaves differently, it feels like an attack, as if their existence challenges the validity of our life. This self-defense not only creates distance, but also opens the door to disdain, for people often resent what forces them to re-examine themselves. Stoic philosophy offers another view. Epictetus said that each person is the product of circumstances and education. This means the values we hold are not universal truths, but the result of the path we walked. Others walked another path, and naturally their beliefs differ. Recognizing this relativity makes us less rigid, less quick to judge, and more open to listening. Then difference no longer threatens, but becomes an opportunity to learn and expand our vision. I recall a friend from college. He grew up in a family that prized stability, so he pursued a secure government job. I was different. I longed for challenge. I wanted to build something of my own. We often argued. He called me reckless. I thought him complacent. At times, we even stopped speaking. Later, I saw we were merely protecting the values we had inherited. Neither was truly wrong. Only when we accepted this difference could the friendship endure, and we learned to respect each other's choices. Conflicting values can be a barrier, but they need not lead to hatred if placed in a wider frame. What matters is humility, the recognition that no one holds the whole truth. Marcus Aurelius reminded that every perspective is but a fragment of the whole. With open hearts, we see that the diversity of values enriches the world rather than threatens unity. In reality, dislike often arises when we resist facing the fear that our own values may not be perfect. But if we accept this fragility, we no longer need to diminish others to elevate ourselves. Instead, we learn to coexist in a diverse world. From the Stoic view, conflicting values remind us that we cannot control what others believe or choose. The only control lies in our response. To close our hearts and deepen conflict, or to open them and practice respect. And in this choice, our virtue is tested and refined. 4. Rumors and distorted stories. Among all the reasons someone may grow hostile toward you, Rumors and distorted stories may be the most dangerous. They require no proof, no truth, not even a reasonable cause, just a few fabricated words spreading with alarming speed. A story passed through many mouths gradually changes, like a shattered mirror reflecting a warped image. The frightening part is that the less truth it contains, the easier it spreads, for vagueness becomes fertile ground for imagination. When a rumor is planted, it behaves like a virus. It spreads beyond control, leaving traces wherever it touches. At first, listeners may doubt, but after hearing it repeated from multiple sources, they begin to treat it as obvious truth. This mechanism gives rumors greater destructive power than actual wrongdoing. A small mistake can be magnified into a corrupt character. A misunderstood situation can be used as evidence of betrayal, and a simple act can be branded with sinister motives. From that moment, your image in others' eyes is no longer you, but a version distorted by someone else's words. Think back to a time you heard a story about a colleague, a friend, or an acquaintance, only to later discover it was entirely false. How did it feel? You realize you were drawn into a cycle where no one truly verified anything, merely passing it along to satisfy curiosity. While we may recognize and correct ourselves, the victim of the rumor must bear lasting consequences: loss of trust, isolation, even false judgment in both work and life. What makes rumors even more dangerous is human nature's attraction to the negative. Good stories are rarely repeated, but a single negative one quickly becomes a hot topic, embellished to sound dramatic. A colleague receiving praise is seldom discussed, but a remark like, "He was favored because of connections," can sweep through the office within days. This is the psychological mechanism of negativity bias, once useful for survival but now fertile ground for rumors to thrive. Stoic philosophy gives us strong counsel. Live so that the truth of your character stands firm against any rumor. Seneca once reminded us that we cannot control the tongues of others, but we can control our own life and virtue. If you live with integrity, if your actions remain consistent, then even if rumors spread, they are like wind against a stone wall. The discerning will look to reality, and truth will endure through time. However, integrity does not mean silent endurance forever. In many cases, it is necessary to clarify false information with calmness and transparency. What matters is not to answer with anger or bitterness, for that only fuels the rumor. A wiser response is to present the truth and then let your actions speak the rest. The Stoic does not prove worth with words, but with life itself. In my own experience, I once witnessed a friend accused of dishonesty at work. The rumor spread so widely that his manager confronted him. Instead of anger or endless arguments, he quietly presented clear evidence of his actions' results. Records, undeniable proof. Soon the rumor lost its strength, for it had no ground to cling to. I learned then that in a world where tongues can be sharper than daggers, transparency and composure are the strongest shields. Remember this: you cannot control what others say about you. That lies beyond your reach. What you can control is your integrity, guarding your mind from being shaken by external noise and focusing on what is real. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If what they say is true, correct yourself. If it is false, smile." That is how the Stoic overcomes rumor, by holding firm to inner peace, refusing to let the outside world define who they are. 5. Insecurity and projection. Deep within the human psyche, insecurity is one of the most persistent and difficult emotions to escape. It is like a shadow that follows us, silently shaping how we see the world and respond to others. When a person has not learned to confront and overcome their own insecurity, they often choose the easier path, projecting those negative feelings onto others. This projection turns the other into a mirror, reflecting their own shortcomings, failures, or unresolved fears. From that reflection, they may develop resentment, irritation, even hostility, not because the other has done wrong, but because they are reminded of what they themselves have not achieved. Picture someone frustrated with their career. They see a colleague promoted, and instead of celebrating or finding motivation, their insecurity twists that success into a reminder of their inadequacy. Rather than admit their fear and procrastination, they release their discomfort onto the colleague through cold stares, whispered gossip, or subtle opposition. This is projection, transforming inner dissatisfaction into arrows aimed outward, hoping to lessen the pressure within. Yet the irony is that it solves nothing. It only deepens their isolation from others, while widening the gap within their own soul. Seneca once said, "The insecure will always find reasons to complain, for they refuse to face themselves." This is not only a sharp observation of human nature, but also a reminder that negative emotions rarely reflect the truth of the external world. They reveal instead the battles left unresolved within. When you see someone quick to anger or eager to belittle others, consider whether they are fighting a hidden fear. Sometimes your confidence, your calm, or simply your balance in life is enough to make them feel exposed in their weakness. The danger of projection lies in the cycle it creates. The more successful you are, the more insecure they feel. The more insecure they feel, the more they assign bad motives to you, which in turn strengthens their dislike. This loop can spiral endlessly unless its nature is recognized. For you, if you are not mindful, you may fall into the trap of constantly explaining or proving yourself. But this only pulls you into their emotional storm, making you forget that the root lies in them, not in you. Stoic philosophy teaches us a different stance. When you recognize projection, step back and remind yourself, this is not the truth about me. This is their reflection. As Epictetus emphasized, we are not harmed by events, but by the views we take of them. In this case, the event is a harsh look or a cutting remark, but its real source is the insecurity in the other person's heart. When you see this clearly, you suffer less, for you know the arrow was never aimed at your essence. It was born from their inner conflict. This does not mean tolerating every harmful act. Understanding does not equal accepting injustice. It only helps you maintain composure and avoid overreaction. You must still draw boundaries, but do so from clarity, not anger. This way, you protect your peace while refusing to fuel another's insecurity. In my own experience, I once had a colleague who seemed irritated whenever I presented ideas. At first, I thought I had unknowingly offended him, but over time, I realized the issue was not me. He simply felt he was not good enough. My ideas only reminded him of that. Once I understood this, I no longer took his irritation personally. I adjusted my communication, gave recognition when due, and kept clear boundaries to avoid being swept into negativity. The tension eased, and I preserved my own calm. Insecurity and projection are natural psychological patterns, but we need not be victims of them. By learning to recognize them, we avoid needless pain. By staying calm, we resist being pulled into another storm. And by drawing boundaries, we combine compassion with self-protection. This is how a Stoic faces projection, through awareness, through self-mastery, and through fidelity to one's true values. 6. Lack of empathy. One of the deeper reasons people so easily develop resentment toward one another is the absence of empathy. When a person no longer has the ability or the will to place themselves in another's position, they view the world through a distorted lens, seeing only what relates to themselves. From there, they quickly form judgments, often harsh ones. A lack of empathy is like an invisible wall separating people, causing every word and action to be misread. It not only distorts truth, but also turns small misunderstandings into grudges that are difficult to resolve. Imagine a familiar situation. You arrive late to a meeting because of an unexpected problem. If the other person has empathy, they will understand you faced difficulty and will listen to your explanation. But if they lack empathy, they will instantly assume you disrespected them, that you are irresponsible, or that you do not value their time. From something simple, a barrier is erected, one built not from fact, but from their inability to see beyond themselves. This lack of empathy is not always born of carelessness. Often it stems from arrogance and selfishness. When people are consumed by their own ego, there is no space left to listen or care about others' experiences. Everything is measured against their own emotions and needs. If something displeases them, the other is automatically at fault. If they feel unfulfilled, blame is immediately placed elsewhere. In such an environment, true understanding becomes rare and negative reactions become habitual. Stoic philosophy examines this through a distinct lens. Epictetus said people are not troubled by events, but by how they interpret them. Without empathy, a person cannot see from multiple perspectives. They only see from the narrow viewpoint of the self. This limitation makes them prone to overreaction. Instead of perceiving reality, they see only the reflection of their own dissatisfaction. Thus, dislike of others emerges not because the other is truly bad, but because they lack the capacity to view the situation differently. I recall an experience at work. A colleague once assumed I deliberately ignored his comment in a meeting. In reality, I simply did not hear him because of the noise in the room. Yet because he lacked empathy, he believed I was dismissing him, and our cooperation suffered. Only after an open conversation was the misunderstanding resolved. That experience reminded me that a lack of empathy not only damages relationships but also steals opportunities for collaboration and growth. A lack of empathy is often accompanied by prejudice. Once someone labels you as part of a group, they easily attach negative traits to you, regardless of reality. It is how people conserve mental energy by relying on ready-made patterns instead of seeking truth. But this efficiency is precisely what breeds conflict and alienation. The important truth is that we cannot force others to be empathetic, but we can choose our response. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone errs, remember they act as they believe is right." Applying this perspective, we can see another's lack of empathy not as a direct attack on our worth, but as a limitation in their understanding. Instead of reacting sharply, we can remain calm, explain if necessary, or simply refuse to let their judgment disturb our mind. One way to guard ourselves against a lack of empathy is to train ourselves to become more empathetic. When we practice stepping into another's place, we reduce misunderstandings in relationships and strengthen emotional self-control. Instead of reacting impulsively, we pause to ask, if I were in their situation, might I act the same way? That simple question opens a new space, one where we can see with less bitterness. The lack of empathy in others is unavoidable, but it need not disturb your inner peace. You hold the power to choose how you interpret, how you respond, and how you maintain self-respect. By cultivating empathy within yourself, you not only shield yourself from unfair judgment, but also help create connections that are more genuine and enduring. 7. Distorted competition. Competition is a natural part of human life. It appears early through childhood games, school grades, and later in work, relationships, and even in the way we compare ourselves with those around us. When kept within healthy limits, competition helps us mature, fuels growth, and pushes us to strive harder toward our potential. But once competition becomes distorted, it ceases to be a positive force and turns into a destructive fire, burning fairness, character, and the bonds between people. Distorted competition begins when the goal shifts from self-growth to pulling others down. When someone sees your success as their failure, they no longer view you as a colleague, partner, or friend, but only as a rival to be defeated. They measure every detail, wait for your mistakes, and sometimes even create cracks to make you stumble. Instead of working to improve themselves, they spend their energy trying to drag you down. And in that process, hatred, envy, and bitterness grow stronger. I once witnessed this in a work group. When one member was praised by a manager, instead of feeling collective pride, others whispered that the person must have charmed the boss or was just lucky. Instead of using that success as motivation, they saw it as a threat. Distorted competition erodes teamwork and eats away at trust. When someone is constantly targeted with scrutiny and envy, they begin to feel isolated, and the environment turns toxic. The sad truth is, in such an atmosphere, no one truly grows. All remain trapped in a cycle of meaningless rivalry. Marcus Aurelius once reminded, "He who seeks to rise by bringing others down loses his own dignity." This captures the essence of distorted competition. It blinds people to the reality that true progress comes from within. When you are consumed with diminishing others, you miss the chance to elevate yourself. It is like standing in a pit, shoveling dirt onto others' feet, not realizing you are sinking deeper yourself. Distorted competition often stems from insecurity. Those who feel inadequate tend to see others' success as a threat instead of inspiration. Instead of asking, "What can I learn from them?" they think, "How can I make them fail?" This is how personal insecurity turns outward into hostility. Left unchecked, this hostility can become destructive actions, spreading rumors, gossiping, or using schemes to damage another's reputation or work. The important point is that we cannot control how others view competition. There will always be those who let rivalry twist into sabotage, but we can choose how we engage. Stoicism reminds us that true growth lies in conquering ourselves, not in defeating others. Healthy competition means seeing others' success as a mirror to reflect on our own path and a motivation to improve. Distorted competition brings only loss. Loss of peace, loss of character, and loss of relationships that could have been meaningful. Ask yourself, does another's success truly diminish mine? The answer is usually no. Life is not a finite pie where one person's gain reduces your share. In fact, their success may open opportunities for you, or at the very least, strengthen your belief that what you desire is possible. By shifting perspective from destructive to constructive competition, you free yourself from envy and focus on cultivating yourself. Distorted competition is a test of character. It reveals whether we can uphold integrity and composure in a world obsessed with comparison. A Stoic does not join the game of tearing others down, but chooses the path of elevating oneself. In doing so, they achieve not only outward success, but also the most enduring victory, mastery over themselves. 8. The weight of social expectation. Few burdens are as invisible yet heavy as the weight of social expectation. It seeps into choices and steps, often causing people to live not for themselves, but for the gaze of others. Society defines standards, what counts as success, happiness, or a life worthy of admiration. If you fit these molds, you are praised and accepted. But if you choose a different path, you may instantly become the target of criticism, mockery, or even hatred. Many feel discomfort at those who dare to live differently, because such differences remind them that the molds they cling to may not be absolute. Consider someone who leaves a stable job to pursue a personal passion. For him, it is courage and honesty with himself. But to many around him, it appears reckless, a betrayal of the traditional expectations of stability and safety. Instead of respecting the choice, they label him with negativity. In truth, their discomfort does not come from his action, but from their own fear. They dare not leave their comfort zone, so when they see someone else do so, they criticize to reinforce the belief that their way is the only right one. Social expectation also shows itself in smaller ways. You must marry at a certain age, hold a prestigious job, own a house, a car, or live by moral codes dictated by the community. When you do not comply, the commentary begins. And from commentary, resentment arises. Others do not truly care about you. They care that you are not like them, not following the rules they trust. Your difference becomes their excuse to affirm their own worth. Marcus Aurelius reminded, "Live in accordance with nature and do not let the crowd force you off the path that suits your soul." His words hold liberating power. Social expectation, in the end, is only a collection of opinions that shift with time and circumstance. What is called a standard today may be outdated tomorrow. If we let our lives revolve around pleasing others, we will never find peace, for society's expectations are a bottomless pit. I once knew a woman who chose not to marry, though she was past 30. For her, independence and spiritual freedom mattered most. Yet many around her saw it as a deficiency, offering constant advice, even criticism. At first, she felt pressured and saddened. But once she embraced a Stoic perspective, she realized that those looks and words did not reflect her true worth. They reflected society's insecurity when faced with difference. From then on, she lived calmly and confidently, no longer shaken by gossip. Social expectation can fuel resentment, for it unsettles people to see you do what they dare not. But remember, you were not born to fulfill others' expectations. You were born to walk your own path. The Stoic knows this boundary well. We cannot control the thoughts or words of the crowd, but we can control our honesty with ourselves. By standing firm in your path, you discover a freedom no social expectation can take away. When others judge you, treat it as a test. If you falter, perhaps you do not yet fully believe in your own worth. But if you remain calm, walking with the conviction that this life belongs to you, then in that moment you break free from the chains of expectation. And that is a profound victory, not only over the crowd, but over the fear within yourself. 9. The hunger for recognition. One of humanity's most universal needs is the desire to be recognized. As children, we long for a word of praise from parents, for a teacher's notice of our effort. As adults, we hope colleagues, friends, and loved ones see our dedication. Recognition is not merely compliments or rewards. It affirms that what we do matters, that we are not invisible. When this need is neglected too long, disappointment and bitterness take root, and from them, resentment grows. In the workplace, this is strikingly clear. A person may silently carry the load, ensuring everything runs smoothly, yet when success arrives, the spotlight shines on someone else. They receive no thanks, no acknowledgement, and frustration builds. This lack of recognition makes them suspicious of colleagues, even hostile, not because the colleague did wrong, but because they feel dismissed, their effort taken for granted. When people feel invisible, sorrow easily turns into blame against others, rather than awareness that the real issue lies in neglect within the group. The absence of recognition can also appear at home. A child who grows up without encouragement may form the belief they are never good enough. As adults, that belief becomes insecurity, which drives comparison. They envy those who receive attention and affection, for deep down, it is what they always longed for, but never had. Their resentment is not truly aimed at you, but at the emptiness left unfilled in their past. Epicurus once said, "When people are not recognized, they easily turn to bitterness." This shows that lack of recognition is not fleeting. It can root itself deeply as a source of negative emotion. For those without the strength to illuminate themselves, the absence of external recognition becomes fuel for blame and resentment. They do not ask, "Have I done my best?" Instead, they ask, "Why are they seen and not me?" That question keeps them trapped in envy. It is important to understand that the desire for recognition is natural. But if we let our worth depend entirely on others' acknowledgement, we will live in constant unrest. External recognition is fragile. Today they may praise, tomorrow they may forget. Stoicism offers another path. Let your actions and character be their own reward. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A flower does not need praise to bloom. Its nature is to bloom." If we live true to our nature, the greatest recognition is harmony with our conscience, not the gaze of others. In my own experience, I once saw a colleague work diligently, yet remain bitter for lack of attention from the boss. Each time another was praised, he criticized. When asked, he admitted his pain was not that others were better, but that he felt overlooked. That moment showed me how lack of recognition can sour into resentment if one does not learn to acknowledge oneself. Once we can do that, external recognition becomes an added reward, not our only lifeline. The lack of recognition will always exist, for others cannot always see everything we do. But instead of letting it breed resentment, we can treat it as a chance to find fulfillment within. Do good, live rightly not for applause, but because it accords with your character. When we do this, we stop being troubled by indifference or envy. For the highest recognition is the peace that comes from knowing we have lived true to ourselves. Part 2. Still waters defeat strong winds. The strategy of intentional silence. There is a quiet power many overlook in relationships and conflicts. The power of intentional silence. In today's society, where everyone rushes to defend their views, to argue, to prove themselves right, silence is often mistaken for weakness or cowardice. But from the Stoic perspective, silence is not avoidance, nor is it lack of courage. It is a strategic choice, a way of protecting the mind from the storms of others' emotions and from our own. Think of the image of water. When the wind rises, waves crash against the shore and noise fills the air. But when water is still, it reflects everything clearly. People are the same. In conflict, if our mind churns like waves, we react in haste, speak words that wound, or act in ways we later regret. But when we remain silent, we give ourselves space to settle, to see the matter with clarity. Silence becomes the necessary pause where reason, not anger, takes the lead. Many fear that silence makes them appear weak. Yet in truth, only the weak rush to prove their strength. The truly strong need prove nothing, for they know their worth does not rest in the crowd's approval. Seneca once wrote, "The wise man argues not to defeat others, but to conquer himself." And often the clearest sign of that victory is the ability to remain silent, refusing to be dragged into a pointless contest. The strategy of intentional silence is not endless withdrawal. It is silence chosen at the right moment. It may mean not answering provocation, not rushing to correct a misunderstanding, not explaining yourself to someone who has already closed their ears. We know that words in such moments only fuel the fire. Silence here protects our inner peace and denies energy to the spiral of negativity. In reality, there are relationships where one side constantly seeks conflict. They test your patience, push you to react, knowing that once you lose control, they have an excuse to justify their own behavior. In such cases, silence becomes a shield. Not silence born of confusion, but silence born of wisdom, knowing that any word would only pull you deeper into their trap. Silence, then, is how you break their game. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "When insulted, ask, 'Does this harm my virtue?' If not, then it means nothing." This is the essence of intentional silence. We choose not to react, not because we agree, but because we know the insult cannot touch what is essential. Our virtue, our character, and our peace do not lie in others' hands, but in our own choices. It is important to distinguish intentional silence from submissive silence. Intentional silence carries strength, control, and discipline. It comes from clear awareness. We cannot control others' words, but we can control our response. Submissive silence, by contrast, comes from fear, from surrender, from avoiding confrontation. That silence does not solve problems. It lets injustice persist. The Stoic does not stay quiet out of fear, but chooses silence, knowing which battles are worth fighting and which are better left aside. Apply this strategy in daily life. When met with a malicious comment, instead of rushing to answer, step back and remain silent. When someone deliberately provokes, hold your silence instead of explaining. You will notice how many conflicts dissolve when they are no longer fed. And in that silence, you discover freedom, for you are no longer carried away by another's emotions. Still waters defeat strong winds is more than a metaphor. It is a principle of life. In a noisy world, the one who can keep their mind still holds the greatest strength. Intentional silence does not weaken you. It strengthens you because it proves you govern yourself. In the end, the greatest victory is not silencing others, but refusing to be pulled into what does not deserve you. Part 3. Too good is a trap. 6 signs to recognize. 1. The fear of saying no. One of the clearest signs of being seen as too agreeable is the inability to say no. It may seem like a small detail in communication, but in truth, the ability to refuse reflects much about self-respect, personal boundaries, and inner strength. Those who cannot say no often carry the fear of being disliked, of being called selfish, or of disappointing others. Instead of protecting their time, energy, and values, they choose to please everyone, even at the cost of exhaustion, depletion, and the gradual loss of themselves. In the workplace, this is obvious. Some people are always the first choice for favors because they never refuse. They take on extra work when already overloaded, join projects outside their responsibility for fear of offending, or cover for negligent colleagues. At first, this makes them appear reliable, but over time, their excessive devotion becomes a trap. Others begin to take their help for granted, no longer valuing their effort. When exhaustion sets in, or they hope for fairness in return, disappointment follows as they realize their sacrifice was never truly recognized. In personal life, the inability to say no leads to toxic relationships. Someone asks again and again. Someone exploits kindness, and instead of setting limits, they continue giving, hoping to be loved and appreciated. Yet paradoxically, the more unconditional their giving, the less they are respected. In the eyes of those who exploit, silence and compliance mean no boundaries exist. And when boundaries vanish, they are no longer treated as equals, but merely as resources to be used. Stoicism confronts this truth directly. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." What seems simple becomes a powerful reminder here. Do not agree when your heart wishes to refuse. Forced agreement is not only a lie to others, it is a betrayal of oneself. The Stoic values integrity in word and deed, and that includes the courage to say no when necessary. I once saw a friend who constantly took on the work of others. He thought this would earn respect and recognition. Instead, no one noticed anymore. They came to expect it as normal. When he finally refused once, the group reacted with annoyance, as if he had done something wrong. This revealed a harsh truth. If you do not set your own boundaries, no one else will set them for you. The inability to say no also destroys balance in life. Time and energy are finite. When endlessly given to others' demands, nothing remains for what truly matters: family, health, personal growth. One becomes busy pleasing everyone, yet forgets their own needs and dreams. By the time they awaken, years may already be lost. The truth is, saying no does not make you selfish. It shows that you know and honor your own worth. The Stoics remind us that we cannot control others' thoughts, but we can control our choices. You cannot stop their displeasure when you refuse, but you can stop yourself from losing integrity in trying to appease. When you learn to say no calmly, without anger, without defensiveness, you discover real strength lies there. Remember, kindness has meaning only when it is voluntary, not forced. A yes spoken in exhaustion is not kindness, it is meaningless sacrifice. And such sacrifice does not win respect. It only makes you fade in others' eyes. So begin to say no when necessary. For sometimes refusing others is the very way you say yes to your peace, health, and dignity. 2. Apologizing for simply existing. There is a habit many carry through life without noticing. Apologizing simply for existing. They apologize for being 1 minute late to a meeting, even with valid reasons. They apologize when bumping into someone, but also when someone bumps into them. They apologize for offering an opinion, as if having a view were a burden. Some even apologize simply for existing, for taking up space, for needing attention. At first, this may look like politeness or humility. But if it becomes habitual, it is quiet self-denial, eroding self-worth. When you constantly apologize, the hidden message you send the world is, "I am unworthy, I am a burden, I must earn acceptance." Others receive this signal and treat you accordingly. They value your words less, listen less, and easily dismiss your needs. For if even you imply your presence requires apology, why should they offer respect? Apology, in this sense, becomes a mask hiding fear of rejection. A friend once told me she realized she began nearly every sentence with, "I'm sorry, but," even when she had done nothing wrong. She apologized for asking questions, for giving feedback, for needing help. The habit began in childhood, when she was told to be obedient, not to disturb adults, not to cause trouble. Over time, she came to believe her presence was a burden, and apology was her only way to atone for existing. This story is not rare. Many adults carry similar wounds, living small, with diminished confidence. Stoicism shines truth on this. Epictetus taught, "A man is not defined by others' opinions, but by his own character and actions." When you over-apologize, you hand others the right to define your worth. You make yourself dependent on their acceptance instead of affirming yourself through integrity and consistency. The Stoic understands no one must apologize for living, for speaking truth, or for existing in their own way. Apology is required only when true harm is caused. Otherwise, it is self-debasement. Imagine someone in a meeting presenting an important idea, but beginning with, "Sorry, this may be silly." Instantly, the idea loses weight not because of its content, but because the speaker planted doubt in advance. Had they spoken with calm confidence, the same idea would have carried greater force. The difference lies not in the thought itself, but in how one positions oneself. Over-apologizing positions you as lesser from the start. The troubling part is that many are unaware of the habit. They think they are being polite, avoiding discomfort, but in reality, it is fear repeating itself. Fear of displeasing, fear of judgment, fear of rejection. Apology becomes their shield, but the shield becomes a chain, trapping them in false safety, preventing them from stepping out to claim their worth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not let your mind become the servant of another." Excessive apology is precisely this, turning yourself into a servant of others' opinions and emotions. You apologize to soothe them, but imprison yourself in their gaze. The Stoic takes another path, humility paired with dignity, ready to admit fault when guilty, but never apologizing simply for being true to one's nature and values. If you notice yourself apologizing without cause, begin with awareness. Each time you want to say sorry, ask, "Did I truly do wrong? Did my action truly harm anyone?" If not, replace apology with another expression. "Thank you for waiting. Thank you for listening. I'd like to share a thought." These words remain polite, but affirm your worth without lowering yourself. Remember, existence is never a fault. You need not apologize for having a voice, for having needs, for taking space in the world. When you stop apologizing for existing, your mind feels lighter and others begin to respect you more. Respect does not begin with what others give, it begins with what you refuse to take away from yourself. 3. Avoiding conflict at all costs. Many believe avoiding conflict equals maturity and wisdom. They think silence, endurance, or constant concession is the best way to preserve harmony. But when avoidance becomes absolute, it ceases to be calmness and turns into fear and lack of boundaries. Those who avoid at all costs think they protect peace, but in truth, they sacrifice respect and dignity for a fragile calm. This avoidance shows itself everywhere. A colleague is constantly interrupted in meetings, yet smiles and lets it pass. A friend is mocked excessively, but stays quiet to avoid offense. A family member is belittled or controlled, but dares not respond for fear of straining ties. At first, they believe they kept the peace. But over time, small wounds accumulate into silent resentment. And that suppressed resentment poisons the relationship more surely than open conflict ever could. The Stoic does not seek conflict nor nurture hostility, but neither do they blindly avoid it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Truth does no harm. Only evading truth does." If someone crosses your boundaries, If someone disrespects your worth, silence and pretense are not noble. They are complicity in wrongdoing. Avoiding conflict here does not preserve peace, it breeds injustice and invites more transgression. I once knew a man who avoided every argument. When insulted, he only smiled. When colleagues shifted their burdens onto him, he accepted them all. To others, he seemed gentle, reasonable. But years of such reasonableness drained him. His relationships twisted, for in their eyes he was no longer someone to respect, but someone to exploit. When he tried to change, it was too late. They had already grown accustomed to his silence as consent. Stoicism stresses that while we cannot control others' behavior, we always control our response. Extreme avoidance is not control, it is surrender of self. The Stoic knows some moments demand speech not to prove superiority, but to restore boundaries and fairness. To speak at the right time is reason. To be silent in all cases is fear disguised as calm. It is vital to distinguish between choosing battles and avoiding all battles. Choosing battles means knowing which disputes are worth engaging, for not every insult needs reply. But avoiding all conflict means ignoring even clear violations. That silence causes others to devalue you, for they see you willing to endure rather than protect yourself. Epictetus taught, "You cannot control what others say, but you can control how you respond." Sometimes, the right response is not avoidance, but calm confrontation. A simple phrase, "I do not agree with that," or "I will not accept this treatment," can reset order. It requires no anger, but displays firmness. That is the strength of one who stays composed without compromising. Avoiding conflict at all costs only distances us from ourselves. It leaves us uneasy, for we know we have sacrificed truth to please others. The Stoic understands true peace is not the absence of disputes, but the presence of honesty, lived in alignment with principle. At times, directness builds stronger relationships, for respect comes only when others know you will defend your boundaries. So stop avoiding every conflict. Learn to choose which battles matter, and when needed, speak with calmness and clarity. This is not only self-protection, it teaches others real respect. For lasting peace never comes from avoidance, but from the courage to face truth. 4. The need for everyone to like you. One of the most common psychological traps people fall into is the desire to be liked by everyone. This longing comes from our primal instinct to be accepted by the group, for in early human life, survival often depended on belonging. Yet in the modern world, when that desire is taken too far, it becomes an invisible chain. Those who always seek to be liked easily lose their identity, constantly reshaping themselves to meet others' expectations. Each time they enter a new group, they adjust their attitude, their tone, even their opinions just to fit in and avoid disapproval. At first, this may help them blend in anywhere. They are praised as easygoing, pleasant, and cooperative. But over time, such agreeableness turns into blandness. Others may remember them as nice or easy, but struggle to recall who they truly are. For when you spend your life reflecting others' desires, you cease to be yourself. You become a diluted version of countless expectations without a clear identity of your own. Even worse, the need to be liked often leads people to sacrifice truth and principle. They agree with views they do not believe in, just to avoid disagreement. They laugh at jokes that offend them, out of fear of being labeled difficult. They accept roles or plans that go against their values, fearing rejection if they decline. Gradually, they lose sight of who they really are. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if it is not based on truth." His words are a warning to those who crave unconditional approval from the crowd. Truth does not need agreement to exist, and your worth does not depend on universal acceptance. The Stoic understands that in life, some will love you and some will not, no matter what you do. Instead of exhausting yourself chasing universal approval, guard your integrity and live by principle. I once knew a colleague skilled at pleasing everyone. He could talk sports with one group, fashion with another, and even change his stance on an issue depending on his audience. Everyone thought him likable, yet when real input was needed, no one turned to him. They knew he would only echo what they wanted to hear, not what he truly believed. His hunger to be liked had cost him respect, a far greater loss. The Stoic takes a different path. He does not seek conflict nor deliberately offend, but he will not trade truth for approval. He knows popularity is fleeting, shifting with time, circumstance, and self-interest. Respect, however, endures, and it comes only when one dares to live honestly, standing firm in principle even when it makes him unlikable to some. This does not mean ignoring others or living selfishly. It means balance, respecting others without betraying oneself, listening without losing identity, staying open without dissolving into conformity. Once you understand that you do not need universal approval to live fully, you live lighter, and the relationships that remain will be genuine where you are accepted as you truly are. In the end, remember, you cannot please everyone, and you do not need to. Your life is not defined by the number of people who like you, but by the honesty with which you live. When you accept that some will dislike you no matter what, you find true freedom. Freedom to speak what must be spoken, to do what must be done, and to live a life faithful to your nature. And that is a value no fleeting approval can replace. 5. Over-explaining. One of the clearest signs of insecurity and dependence on external validation is the habit of over-explaining. Some people cannot simply say no with firmness. They feel compelled to add endless reasons, excuses, and justifications. They fear that without enough explanation, others will think poorly of them, misunderstand, or judge. Ironically, the more they explain, the weaker their message becomes, turning a rightful decision into something that sounds like asking permission. In daily life, this appears often. Someone declines a dinner invitation but does not stop at, "Sorry, I can't make it." They continue, "Because I have to work late, and I've been tired this week, and I also have a meeting tomorrow. I really wish I could." These reasons seem to prove their refusal is valid. But in truth, they send the message, "My decision is not strong. I need you to accept it." Instead of respecting the answer, the listener now sees room to persuade or pressure. This habit often grows from fear of being misunderstood. Many believe that without reasons, others will see them as selfish, lazy, or uncaring. Yet beneath that fear is something deeper, the fear of not being worthy of making their own decisions. So they feel compelled to prove their choice deserves respect. It is no longer communication, it becomes a performance for approval. The Stoic sees this as a loss of self-mastery. Epictetus said, "Do not explain yourself too much. We are not born to justify, but to act." The value of a decision lies in clarity and firmness, not in the number of words surrounding it. When you rush to explain, you hand others the authority to judge if your choice is acceptable. But the truth is, your decision is yours, and you owe no one justification for guarding your boundaries. Think of workplace examples. One colleague might say, "I'm busy, I cannot take this project," and stop there. Clear, respectful, and firm. Another, when asked, begins a list. "I have meetings, I have reports, I'm tired, I have personal plans." This does not invite sympathy, it invites challenge. Then after the meeting, can you do it? Others can help with your reports. Over-explaining ruins the original message. At its core, the more you explain, the more you reveal your lack of confidence in your choice. And when you lack confidence, others are less likely to respect it. It is like building a wall with thin bricks. The more you pile, the weaker it looks. A short, firm sentence, by contrast, is like a stone solid, unadorned, yet unshakable. Stoicism teaches that consistency in action matters more than 1,000 words of justification. Marcus Aurelius reminded, "If it is right, do it. If it is not, do not. That is all." No defense, no persuasion. A sound decision carries its own weight, and that weight only diminishes when we wrap it in needless words. If you see yourself often over-explaining, practice stopping. Instead of long refusals, try a simple, decisive sentence. Instead of listing reasons, trust that your choice is enough. Courtesy does not require excuses. Respecting others does not mean abandoning self-respect. Maturity is not the ability to justify everything. It is the courage to stand firm in your choices, whether others understand or not. Explain less, live more clearly. That is how lasting respect is built, both from others and from yourself. 6. Enduring disrespect. In many relationships, both at work and in personal life, some choose to silently endure disrespect rather than defend themselves. They believe silence preserves harmony, that tolerance prevents rupture. In truth, such silence sends a hidden message. I accept this treatment. Repeated often, it not only encourages further disrespect, but also erodes self-respect. Picture an employee constantly interrupted by his boss in meetings. At first, he feels annoyed, but lets it go to avoid trouble. As it happens again and again, others in the room grow used to him being ignored. Eventually, he too believes his voice carries no weight. What began as small dismissals become accepted reality. It not only diminishes him in others' eyes, it makes him diminish himself. The same is true in families. Someone endures constant criticism, comparison, or belittling from relatives. Instead of responding, they stay quiet, telling themselves it's family. But patience here does not improve matters. It turns disrespect into habit, draining balance from the relationship. A bond without respect inevitably becomes a burden, for one side gives while never receiving fairness. The Stoic does not call for angry reaction, but for clear-eyed truth and reasoned action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This does not mean tolerating disrespect, but learning not to let others' words disrupt inner peace. From that calmness, one can respond firmly and wisely, without being dragged into rage. Understand this. Enduring disrespect is not noble or strong. It is surrendering your power, letting others define your worth. The Stoics insist on personal boundaries, knowing dignity cannot survive repeated violation. Epictetus warned, "You become a slave to anyone you allow to insult you without resistance." Silence where a boundary should be drawn is not peace, it is complicity. Often, a calm but firm response is enough to reset respect. A simple, "I will not accept this tone," or "that is not appropriate," can shift how others treat you. No shouting, no anger, only clarity and certainty. When you respect yourself, others are forced to reckon with it, and if they refuse, it is a sign to reconsider the relationship itself. Some fear that demanding respect risks friendship, opportunity, or closeness. But a relationship that cannot survive respect is not a healthy one. If peace costs you your dignity, it is not peace, it is defeat. And the greatest loss is not theirs, but yours, for you chose to live in their shadow. The Stoics teach that respect is not gained by pleasing all, but by living by principle. By holding your boundaries, you may lose shallow ties, but you preserve what matters, your dignity and your peace of mind. And these are the foundations of a steady life. So do not accept disrespect as inevitable. Do not mistake endurance for maturity. True maturity lies in facing truth, responding calmly, and defending your dignity. Only when you stop enduring contempt do you open space for relationships grounded in fairness and mutual respect. And that is the true basis of a life both peaceful and strong. Part 4. 3 rituals to protect the inner life. Ritual 1. The 3-step response filter. In daily life, we are often pulled into the storm of emotions by a single word or unexpected act from someone else. A criticism, a contemptuous look, or a disrespectful gesture can trigger an impulsive reaction. Many later regret their outburst. Regret words they should not have spoken. Regret letting their mood for the day be shaped by just a few minutes of lost control. This is why the Stoics place such value on self-mastery and urge us to have a filter before reacting. The 3-step filter is not merely a technique. It is a mental discipline, a ritual to train the mind to live proactively rather than reactively. The first step is to pause. When anger or irritation strikes, the natural instinct is to react immediately. Yet that very moment is where freedom begins because you can choose. The Stoics believe true freedom starts in mastering this brief pause. One deep breath, a few seconds of slowing down, and you interrupt the slide into impulsive reaction. Pausing does not mean ignoring, it means giving your mind time to separate itself from the surge of emotion. It is like keeping the surface of a lake still, so you can clearly see the reflection in it. The second step is to observe. Once you pause, step into the role of observer without judgment, without haste. Ask yourself, is this truly what is happening, or just how I interpret it? Did the other person intend to offend, or was it mere accident? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of things." Observation lets you separate objective fact from the assumptions of emotion. A careless remark may feel like contempt, but when seen clearly, may carry no such meaning. By stepping back to observe, you cease being the victim of emotion and become the master of perception. The third step is to choose your response. After pausing and observing, you hold the power to decide the most fitting course. This is what marks the difference between instinctive living and deliberate living. Instead of being driven by emotion, you let reason guide the choice. The response might be silence, a calm statement of boundaries, or the decision to walk away. Epictetus taught, "We cannot control the actions of others, but we control how we respond." This power is the essence of inner freedom. When you know no one can force you to react as they wish, you stand firm against all pressure. The 3-step filter: pause, observe, choose sounds simple, but applying it requires discipline. At first, it feels difficult, for the habit of instant reaction runs deep. But with practice, the pause grows easier, observation sharper, and choices calmer and stronger. Like training a muscle, self-mastery is built through daily exercise. Practicing this filter not only preserves your calm in frustrating moments, it also changes how others see you. When they notice you are not easily provoked or pulled into emotional games, they begin to respect you. Composure makes you someone others think twice before treating unfairly, for they know you do not react recklessly but with measured weight. True strength lies not in winning every argument, but in keeping peace within, despite chaos without. The three-step filter is the tool that lifts you out of the cycle of impulsive reaction and into the state of self-command. Each time you practice it, you are not only handling a situation, you are building the very foundation of spiritual freedom, the freedom the Stoics regarded as the highest good of the rational life. Ritual 2. Boundary phrases. In daily communication, one of the greatest challenges is protecting personal boundaries without turning it into confrontation. Many, out of fear of conflict, choose silence and allow others to overstep. Others react too harshly, breaking relationships. The question is, how can we remain calm yet clearly assert our boundaries? The Stoics approach this with balance. They neither avoid nor explode. Instead, they use words that are brief, measured, yet powerful. These are boundary phrases. What are boundary phrases? They are sentences prepared in the mind, ready to use whenever someone crosses the line. They are not attacks, not fueled by anger, but they express firmness. In other words, they are like signposts, clear, calm, and unmistakable. They free you from scrambling for words, prevent emotions from taking over, and help you remain in control. Imagine being constantly asked by colleagues to take on extra work beyond your duties. If you do not know how to say no, you will soon exhaust yourself, but instead of long explanations, you can use a boundary phrase. I cannot take on more work at this time. It is short, decisive, without justification. It shows respect for both your time and theirs. More importantly, it sends the message, your boundaries are not open for endless negotiation. Another scenario. Someone speaks to you disrespectfully. The impulsive reaction may be to retaliate harshly, but that usually worsens matters. A boundary phrase here might be, I am not comfortable with that tone. Just one sentence, but enough to reset the interaction without unnecessary argument. You do not attack, yet you do not remain silent. Your voice stays calm, but your message is clear. This is the Stoic spirit, mastering your response, refusing to let others dictate it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you always have the power of choice. No one can degrade you unless you allow it. Boundary phrases embody this truth. They help you preserve dignity with concise words, instead of letting emotions produce damage or letting silence become complicity. Many worry that setting boundaries will make them disliked or labeled difficult. But the truth is, if a relationship only survives by you constantly surrendering your limits, it is not a balanced relationship. The Stoic does not seek to be liked by everyone. He seeks respect. And respect comes only when you are firm enough to show others where the line stands. It is important to practice so boundary phrases become natural. Do not wait until cornered to search for words. Keep a few simple phrases ready for common situations. When someone asks too much, when someone speaks rudely, when someone tries to control you. Sentences like, I do not agree with that. That does not work for me, or I need more time to consider, are simple yet effective tools. When you use them, keep your voice calm and your gaze steady. Others may resist, even show displeasure, but that does not matter. What matters is that you acted by principle, not fear of rejection. Over time, people will recognize that you have clear boundaries, and that alone will change how they treat you. Remember, boundaries are not walls to divide, but foundations to preserve respect and fairness. Boundary phrases are the tools to express that respect without tension. When you learn to use them, you will no longer feel powerless in difficult moments. Instead, you will walk with confidence and peace, knowing that the respect of others begins with the way you respect yourself. Ritual 3. The recovery cycle. One of the greatest mistakes of modern life is the belief that we can endlessly endure, endlessly work, endlessly face pressure without pausing to restore our strength. Rest is seen as laziness, pauses as weakness, yet no one can maintain clarity or inner strength without cycles of renewal. Like a bow pulled too long without release, it will eventually break. So too with people. Without recovery, exhaustion, both physical and spiritual, is inevitable. The Stoics understood that strength comes not from ceaseless effort, but from balance. They trained willpower, but also honored intentional rest. The recovery cycle is not only about sleep or vacation, but about regular practices that refresh the mind, restore calm, and nourish the spirit. For the greatest enemy of self-mastery is not external hardship, but inner depletion. The recovery cycle can be seen in 3 layers: body, mind, and soul. The body needs rest through sleep, nourishment, and moderate exercise. A weary body drags the mind into disorder. The mind needs space freedom from the constant assault of information, trivial chatter, and pressure to perform. The soul, the deepest part of you, needs connection with values, with purpose, with silence. Neglecting any one of these throws the whole system off balance. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Withdraw into yourself. The inner life is the surest refuge." This shows that recovery is not only outer rest, but a return to the inner self. It may be a few minutes of morning stillness, a slow walk in the park, or the habit of writing reflections at the end of the day to clear the mind. These small pauses build lasting strength, preparing you to face each new day with clarity and resolve. In truth, many fear that resting means falling behind. Yet the paradox is that recovery is what allows you to go further. An athlete knows muscles do not grow during exertion, but in the rest between training sessions. Likewise, willpower and clarity do not strengthen in constant strain, but in cycles of restoration where balance returns. Recovery does not need to be complex. It can begin with setting time boundaries, turning off the phone an hour before bed, giving 15 minutes each morning to breathing and stillness, or keeping a weekend afternoon for reading, writing, or simple quiet. The form does not matter. What matters is intention. Treat it not as luxury, but as discipline, a non-negotiable ritual of life. The Stoics saw this as investment in inner freedom. For only when you know how to renew yourself will you avoid being consumed by outer chaos. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." To master yourself, your mind must be clear, and clarity survives only through recovery. The cycle of renewal is like wind across a lake. It clears the surface, leaving water still enough to reflect truth. After each cycle, you return stronger, clearer, ready to face challenges with reason rather than fatigue. Recovery is not escape. It is preparation to re-enter the world as a stronger, calmer version of yourself. Each time you allow yourself renewal, you train the Stoic habit of restoring balance. And in that balance lies the foundation not only to endure, but to live with freedom, steadiness, and strength. Looking back at everything discussed, I see one truth clearly. Most of our pain, exhaustion, and sense of being trapped in relationships do not come from what others do, but from how we respond. We too often sacrifice ourselves to maintain false harmony, over-explain to seek approval, and stay silent before disrespect out of fear of losing affection. Yet the more we yield, the more we lose respect from others and, more seriously, from ourselves. For me, rituals such as the 3-step response filter, boundary phrases, and the recovery cycle are not just tools of conduct, but a way of life. They keep us from living as mere reflex, teaching us instead to pause, to observe, and to choose in alignment with inner values. I believe dignity and peace are not given, but built, shaped by daily choices. When we learn to respect ourselves first, the world too begins to respect us. And in that lies the foundation of a life that is free, strong, and enduring. If you find value in these reflections, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future content. And remember, true freedom is not found in pleasing everyone, but in the ability to hold your mind steady amid all storms. See you in the next video.